Welcome back. Bit of a weird one today because I've already released my quarterback rankings about a month ago, but being the nerd that I am, I watch film for fun. That's just what I do in my free time, and quarterbacks are the most fun to evaluate, so I end up going back through these quarterbacks on film. And don't get me wrong, for almost every prospect, my opinion has not changed, but there's two quarterbacks that I feel the need to address. The main one being Will Howard, because for anyone who didn't see my initial ranking, I was really low on Shedeur Sanders, and I still am. I think his talent is underwhelming, and I think people have got the processing thing completely wrong. He's not a good processor. He simply ignores open reads consistently, so still very low on him. Cam Ward I liked, but only in the right situations. I think his arm is a lot better than Shedeur, and his processing is better, but he really needs to work on his anticipation. And then there were three quarterbacks who I could just not understand why people weren't talking about more. And the two that I still think are worthy of a top 5 pick are Riley Leonard and Jackson Dart. But the guy who I felt should go first overall was Will Howard, because in a class where the processing seems to be an issue, I absolutely fell in love with Will Howard, and specifically his ability to go through progressions, throw the ball on time, and just make good decisions. But here's what I missed having now watched an excessive amount of his film. He was making throws downfield, and he was making them accurately, which suggested to me that although the ball isn't flying out, what he's actually doing is throwing with touch. But once I started looking specifically for the arm strength, I realised that the ball just never has the juice behind it that you would want from a first-round quarterback. This is still someone I would take on day 2. He's big, he's accurate, he's probably the best processor in this class. He can make throws under pressure, and his best games were in the playoffs. So where I stand on him today, I see him as a high-floor day 2 quarterback that if you put a good team around him, he could not only take you to the playoffs, but actually show up in the big games. But in terms of a first-round franchise quarterback, I didn't do a good enough job evaluating the arm talent, and I don't love admitting that because I'm a pretty stubborn person, and I would like to think I tend to do a pretty good job of covering every base and making sure there's not something I'm missing, but this one slipped through the cracks. And what this also means is that Riley Leonard is my QB1. I am surprised that this isn't someone the media has jumped on, because he's big, he's athletic. The thing I'm assuming holds him back is that the situation didn't do him any favours. He was often under pressure, didn't get a ton of opportunities to stand in the pocket, go through his progressions and throw downfield. And what this meant in terms of a weakness is that he did start to leave the pocket prematurely. So that's something to work on, but he's definitely shown me enough examples of going through progressions and making tough throws where he's had the opportunities for me to think he's got it in him. The accuracy isn't perfect, but I will say that this isn't Drake May or Trey Lance or Anthony Richardson. He has a couple of things to clean up, but he isn't as raw as those guys. And I would actually say his talent is similar to Drake May. In fact, he's a better athlete than Drake May. So what I'm saying is that this is kind of like a more polished Drake May, and that's someone who I can talk myself into drafting to the Titans at first overall. And quite honestly, second overall to the Browns for me would be Jackson Dart, who I have made a separate video about, so feel free to check that out. But now we get to the other prospect that I need to address. Tyler Shough, out of Louisville, who I had as my QB6. I alluded to the fact that if the Steelers drafted him at 21, not that that seems like it's going to be a reality, but that wouldn't be a reach for me. And everything I was saying in the video sounds like someone who is going to be a good starting quarterback in the NFL. I wimped out on Tyler Shough. I let the age and the injury history scare me off him. This is my QB3. Basically what I've done is I've swapped Tyler Shough for Will Howard. Everything else has stayed the same. I still have Cam Ward at 4. But here's my question. How much more talented is Cam Ward than Tyler Shough? Because I like Cam Ward. I don't want that to get confused. But just in comparison, Cam Ward is the favourite to go number 1 to the Titans right now. I feel more comfortable with the negatives of Tyler Shough. He'll be turning 26 in September. But whatever. It's not ideal, but nobody will be talking about that if he plays well. And yes, he has some injury history, but he stayed healthy last season, and trying to predict who will get hurt in the NFL is kind of a silly game for the most part. And I'm not saying this as a realistic possibility, but let me just throw this out there. The sentiment around the Giants right now is that head coach Brian Daboll has 1 year left. I'm not saying that's fair, but the issue is he probably has 1 year left, to make the team truly competitive. I think the additions of Jevon Holland and Paulson Adebo make the defense suddenly look like it could be one of the better ones in the NFL, but I don't see Aaron Rodgers as the answer, so they've left themselves in a position where they need a rookie who's going to be a good enough quarterback in year one to make the team look competitive. And can someone tell me why that's not Tyler Shough? What is it that he is missing? He's big, he's got a good arm, he's an aggressive quarterback that takes the opportunities, but he's also a very experienced college quarterback, which shows up in the lack of mistakes that he's making. He actually throws really well off platform and on the move, which I think probably gets lost in the fact that he is this somewhat gangly looking older prospect. But if you actually just watch it for what he is doing all the off platform sidearm sort of stuff, and he moves well. Most importantly, he's accurate all over the field. I'm somewhat ashamed that I let myself wimp out of this one initially. Tyler Shough is the real deal. Other than that, nothing has changed, but just to run through it quickly, for anyone who did miss that original video, I don't know how much traction Kyle McCord has gained in the media world, but I feel like I'm probably still a lot higher on him than most. I still feel like he's a borderline first rounder, but if it's second round and your team needs a quarterback and didn't get one in the first, snap him up, or go and get Will Howard, who I'm presumably still a lot higher on than the consensus, because both of these guys can take a good team to the playoffs and compete. After that, it's Quinn Ewers, who I see more as a good backup or a low-end starter, not so much as a franchise quarterback. Shedeur Sanders we've spoken about, and I do have a separate video about him as well, so feel free to go check that out. Graham Mertz is coming off an injury, but he could be really dangerous. He's got something if he can pull it together and get healthy. Dillon Gabriel just isn't my cup of tea with the lack of height, but he's another dangerous one. You could bring him in as a backup to someone like Tua Tagovailoa or Bryce Young, and they get hurt, and then Dillon Gabriel comes in and lights it up. I would also love to see him go to the Steelers, because whoever ends up being the starter there, Gabriel could really screw things up, because I think he'd thrive in that system. After that, it's Curtis Rourke, another one that I genuinely liked but has some serious injury concerns. And then for me, not too much to be optimistic about for these other three, Jalen Milroe, Max Brosma and Brady Cook. But there you have it. Not a video that I love making, and not one that you'll probably see me making very often, as I am pretty thorough when I'm going through these evaluations initially, but a couple of things that I misjudged on the original quarterback ranking, so I wanted to put this out there. Looking forward, once I get through all the positions, I will start doing some mock drafts and really diving deep into these scenarios, team situations, and who should be drafted where. But in the short term, my defensive tackle ranking will be coming out very shortly, so keep an eye out for that. If you are enjoying the content, please consider liking and subscribing, as it greatly supports the channel, and I'll see you next time.